Kyungju.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
"73 out of around 650 online public services are back up as of Monday, after a fire broke out at the National Information Resources Service in Daejeon City last Friday. Police are investigating the exact cause of the fire. Lawmakers are set to vote on the last of 4 contentious bills on Monday, ending the 5-day filibuster at the National Assembly. They're likely to gather again as early as Thursday to take care of 60 other welfare-related bills. Beginning Monday, South Korea is allowing visa-free entry to Chinese tourist groups of 3 or more until June 30 next year, aiming to boost both the tourism and local retail sales. Over 1 million visitors from China are expected to come to Korea by the first half of next year. Even on Monday, the first working day since last Friday's fire at the National Information Resources Service, major government systems remain in disarray. The authorities warn it may take up to 4 weeks for a full recovery. Our Park Hyo-bin starts us off.
Local government offices and community service centers have been swamped with frustrated residents as a result of last Friday's fire at the National Information Resources Service in Daejeon. While some basic services such as issuing resident registration and family relation certificates have been restored, others remain unavailable.
I got my resident registration and family relationship certificate, but the main reason I came was for a fixed date stamp, and that service still isn't working.
The National Intelligence Service raised the National Cyber Crisis Alert level from attention to caution as of 6 p.m. Monday. On the same day, the Ministry of Interior and Safety said that restoring the 96 systems directly affected by the fire will take about 4 weeks as it relocates the data to its Daegu backup center.
We deeply apologize once again to the public. It is expected to take about 2 weeks to prepare the resources and another 2 weeks to set up the systems, but we aim to accelerate the process as much as possible with cooperation from firms already housed at the Daegu Center.
According to the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters, as of 4 p.m., 73 out of 647 disrupted systems have been restored. Most financial services have also returned to normal, according to the Financial Services Commission on Monday. Meanwhile, police investigating the cause of the fire are focusing on lithium-ion batteries used at the facility. A team of specialized investigators has been dispatched to examine the scene, reviewing CCTV footage and joint inspection records to determine how sparks were triggered and under what conditions the batteries were handled. On the same day, President Lee Jae-myung also instructed Prime Minister Kim Min-seok to minimize public inconvenience and ensure full restoration, while urging thorough checks and fundamental measures to prevent a recurrence. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
Lawmakers are set to wrap up a marathon 5-day filibuster at the National Assembly. The final bill under debate would allow prosecution of perjury during parliamentary hearings, sparking sharp clashes between the ruling and opposition parties. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
The 5-day filibuster marathon at the National Assembly is nearing its end, with lawmakers preparing to vote on Monday on the last of 4 contentious bills this plenary session. Since the session opened last Thursday afternoon, lawmakers have passed 1 controversial bill each day. Among them, an amendment to the Government Organization Act, a measure establishing a new Broadcasting and Media Communications Committee, and a revision to the National Assembly Act. Progress has been slow because under parliamentary rules, a filibuster can stretch on for up to 24 hours before a separate 3/5 majority vote can end it. That means lawmakers have been limited to tackling 1 bill per day. The bill now up for debate is a proposal that would allow for the prosecution of perjury committed during parliamentary hearings, even after a committee has ended its work. If the chair refuses or avoids filing charges, more than half the members could approve it instead. And if the committee has dissolved, the chairman of the Legislation and Judiciary Committee would be empowered to act in its place. The DP criticized the PPP's filibusters as wasting golden time, while the PPP condemned the amendment as legislative tyranny.
Wasting the golden time to restore South Korea in this way is a clear dereliction of political duty and a betrayal of the people.
As long as Chumia maintains dictatorial control over the Legislation and Judiciary Committee, South Koreans will have to sit through more needless political farces.
The ballot will bring the marathon filibuster to a close, with the ruling party and its allies poised to use their supermajority to pass the bill. But while the plenary session formally ends on Monday, lawmakers are likely to reconvene as early as Thursday. That's because around 60 welfare-related bills considered as uncontentious remain piled up on the agenda awaiting passage. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
President Ishiba is set to hold a summit with Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba in the southeastern city of Busan on Tuesday. The president's National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak briefed reporters this afternoon that Ishiba's trip to South Korea is a return visit following his trip to Tokyo last month and signals a full restoration of their so-called shuttle diplomacy. The 2 leaders are expected to discuss bolstering cooperation on tackling population decline and revitalizing regions outside their respective capitals, as well as on AI and hydrogen energy. We added that the summit will serve as an opportunity to expand the discussions amid the fast-changing global trade order. Ishiba will be on a 2-day visit to South Korea on Tuesday, which will be his first and last trip to Korea as a prime minister. Ahead of South Korea's long Chuseok holiday, which begins this Friday, President Ishiba visited the National Medical Center on Monday to encourage those working in the public healthcare sector.
이번 추석 연휴를 맞이해서 응급의료 상황이 어떤지 좀 여러분들 의견도 한번 들어보고 싶습니다. 어쨌든 현장에서 고생하신 여러분들, 특히 공공의료에 종사하시는 여러분들 정말로 고생이 많으신데 국민의 의료를 책임지는 사람으로서 매우 감사하게 생각합니다.
The president noted that much of the country's public healthcare system, which had been disrupted by the walkout of medical students and trainee doctors last year, has returned to normal. However, he also stressed the importance of expanding regional healthcare infrastructure and essential medical services, which include emergency care and trauma surgery. South Korea is looking to host more Chinese tourists with a visa-free scheme that will run until next June as a test. Now, on its first day today, businesses are slowly warming up. Our Kim Do-yeon tells us more.
As announced in August, on Monday, Chinese tourists in pre-booked groups of 3 or more enter South Korea without a visa. They're able to stay for up to 15 days with this scheme running until June 30th of next year. This is expected to increase Chinese tourists visiting South Korea, with levels already on the path to recovery to pre-COVID times. And for those who missed this chance and already entered South Korea, it's an easy way back into the country.
Although I came too early this time and had to get a visa, I definitely will visit more often now because of visa-free program. I had to spend time and money. The food is excellent and the shopping environment is also very good.
More tourists, however, doesn't automatically equate to additional profit. It also equates to fierce competition. For duty-free stores in Korea, it's time to put up their best possible promotions and presents. This favorite K-food bundle pack comes in this bag with the word fortune written in Korean and Chinese on it. It's also red, a lucky color in Chinese culture. Promotions like this kicked off on Monday across the major players in light of the visa-free program. The duty-free stores are now raising their expected number of visitors.
We attracted a cumulative total of 80,000 visitors through August. With the visa-free policy now boosting group tours, we are targeting 140 visitors by the end of the year. To accommodate this, we are renovating our shopping spaces and enhancing experiential content so that customers leave with pleasant memories, not just products.
That optimism is spilling out onto the streets. Here in Myeongdong, stores are also competing to get the best out of the opportunity. And it's not just Korean local stores. Chinese payment system companies like Alipay and UnionPay are working to host more visitors with gifts prepared for those who use their service.
With the visa-free program, our company is hosting events here in Myeongdong. I hope everyone can have a good time and make good memories.
The government is expecting 1 million visitors from China by the first half of next year through this program. In addition, October is a typically popular month for Chinese tourists as it has China's national holiday in it. Last year, the number of Chinese tourists recovered to around 70% of pre-COVID levels. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
A three-day event, the Metropolis 40th Anniversary Seoul Congress 2025 kicked off on Monday, bringing together leaders from 70 cities. The event shares visions for sustainable urban futures. Our Park Jun-han was there.
For the first time since 2002, Seoul is hosting the Metropolis 40th Anniversary Seoul Congress 2025, where leaders will discuss how the world can move toward sustainable cities. Delivering the opening remarks, Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon emphasized the South Korean capital's commitment and urged cities to address global challenges, such as the climate crisis and inequality, with people-centered, technology-driven solutions.
Seoul is developing new urban models in areas such as transportation, architecture, and the environment. By learning from and cooperating with each other, cities can create a future that is more sustainable, more embracing, and more human-centered.
A city for people, a city embracing technology, Seoul is showcasing its vision for the future, inviting both its citizens and those from other global cities. At the opening ceremony, Jason Schenker, president of Prestige Economics and chairman of the Futurist Institute, highlighted how Seoul has shown the power of public-private partnerships.
Seoul and Korea offer insights into success. Public-private partnerships have helped this economy. Infrastructure investments are very powerful tools to improving people's life, and innovative social solutions. These can be critical too, like the Stepping Stones program that Seoul has implemented. And then there's futurist thinking, embracing these changes to move forward and win in the future.
The last session of the opening day was the Megacity Dialogue. It featured presentations from leaders of megacities such as Seoul, New York, Tokyo, and Guangzhou, under the theme of embracing cities. On Tuesday, participants will experience the Smart Life Week through exhibition viewing, a market forum, and Smart City Awards ceremony, exploring the concept of an attractive smart city that supports vulnerable groups. On Wednesday, the final day of the three-day event, affiliated members will visit sites to fully experience Seoul's beauty, such as its urban architecture and traditional houses. The tour will also include landmarks such as Cheongdam Bridge and Naksan Park that served as backdrops for the Netflix animated film, K-pop Demon Hunters. Park Junan, Arirang News.
South Korea has launched its first Development Cooperation Week, highlighting the importance of partnerships to advance sustainable development goals. The annual Seoul Conference on Official Development Assistance on Monday marks the start of the week-long discussions. Our Oh Soo-young has this report.
How to finance global development in a time of narrowing budgets and geopolitical tensions. That's the challenge faced by governments globally and the theme of the 18th Seoul ODA International Conference, organised by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Korea International Cooperation Agency.
Currently, we are facing a tough environment. Rising geopolitical tensions, growing uncertainty, and even scaling back of ODA by some major donors, all of which make it harder to achieve the sustainable development goals. So against this backdrop, we want to focus on how to mobilize development finance more effectively and how to create innovative partnerships.
The OECD projects a growing drop in official development assistance, with the annual financing gap projected to hit $6.4 trillion by 2030, up from the $4 trillion recorded in 2023.
Official development assistance, ODA, remains a cornerstone of the global financing architecture, particularly for the poorest and most vulnerable countries, in fragile contexts for essential social sectors. ODA plays a unique role in advancing gender equality, protecting human rights, and building climate resilience.
A conference in Sevilla in June saw governments ramp up their commitment to raising the trillions needed. South Korea's Vice Minister Kim Jin-ha said Monday's conference aims to build on the Sevilla commitment, with Seoul determined to actively contribute to advancing the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals.
Our commitment is not only to expand the scale of ODA, but also to improve the quality by sharpening its strategic focus, enhancing effectiveness, and ensuring that our assistance is designed in ways that are both trusted and embraced by our partner countries.
During the sessions, participants highlighted the need to support domestic resources and build public trust and investor confidence in order to unlock additional financing through policy reforms and private investment. The conference is also taking place during Seoul's Development Partnership Week, where government officials and partner agencies from over a dozen countries are participating in events, including a capacity-building program seeking improved coordination and knowledge sharing.
It is how we can improve the effectiveness of our development cooperation through better coordination, transparency, and alignment with our partner country. Korea has built a strong fundamental institutional framework for development cooperation. In terms of ODA, Korea already have the complete package of schemes of loans and grants.
Korea's own experience of transitioning from an aid recipient to a donor country with its rapid socio-economic development within one generation also provides policy examples.
The conversation will continue at the Busan Global Partnership Forum and the high-level meeting of 5 middle-power countries, Mexico, Indonesia, Korea, Turkey and Australia, taking place in Seoul this week. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Also here in Seoul, Seochogu's annual Seoripul Festival has returned again this year, but bigger and better with an emphasis on music. Our An Sung-jin tells us more.
Seocho is the music. This is the slogan for this year's Seoripul Festival, the signature culture and art celebration of Seoul's Seochogu district. As it celebrates its 10th anniversary, the festival has been rebranded as the Seoripul Music Festival, with the district pledging to put an emphasis on the rhythms of joy.
This fall, one of Seoul's busiest boulevards, Pampodero, has been transformed into a vibrant stage by bringing music and various performances onto the streets.
From classical concerts to traditional Korean performances, the festival offers a wide range of harmonious ensembles for visitors to enjoy.
Marking its 10th anniversary, the festival now adds music to its name to highlight its expanded focus. The festival showcases a full spectrum of music for its visitors.
But the highlight of the festival is the 2,600 square meter sketchbook. The 900-meter stretch of the busy Pampodero Road was closed off so that visitors could use color chalk to draw on the streets, transforming the city into a grand stage.
Everything here is so much fun, and I am very excited to be here. My favorite parts are the largest sketchbook and diverse musical performances. I hope this festival continues.
And Arirang TV also set up a booth to share its dedication for K-pop.
Alongside Arirang TV, which we have a long history with, we wanted to open this collaboration booth to contribute to society.
The annual music festival, which was held over the weekend, attracted some 250,000 visitors in another successful artistic celebration for the district. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. For that, we have our sports editor, Paul Neitz, joining us in the studio. Welcome back, Paul.
Thank you. Hello.
Paul, let's begin with football, and again with Son Heung-min, because he scored yet again over the weekend.
He did, and that only really tells half the story, though, to be honest, because Son, he scored a brace in a 3-0 LAFC win away to St. Louis City on Saturday local time. He scored his team's second and third goals in what was a Korean derby of sorts, with Jong Sang-bin lining up for St. Louis City. Son's goals meant he'd scored in each of his last 4 games, but 7 goals during that time. Son has enjoyed a hot start to life in MLS and is now on 8 goals and 1 assist in 8 matches since moving from Tottenham Hotspur in the summer. LAFC are 4th in the Western Conference, 4 points behind San Diego in first, but with 2 games in hand, and have already qualified for the playoffs, which begin at the end of October.
Right. Now, moving on to baseball, a home run for Kim Hae-sung of the LA Dodgers. Tell us more.
Yes, in what was the last regular season outing, he hits a 2-run homer to open the scoring in a 6-1 win over the Seattle Mariners on Sunday. It was his first home run since May 31st and 3rd of the season, to go with 17 RBIs and 13 steals in 71 games. His first season in MLB after 8 years in KBO. The postseason begins tomorrow with the Dodgers taking on the Cincinnati Reds in the Wild Card Series. Meanwhile, Lee Jong-hoo of the San Francisco Giants batted 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a 4-0 win over the Colorado Rockies on Sunday local time. He ends the year with 8 home runs, 55 RBIs and 10 steals in 150 games.
Paul, speaking of postseason, the KBO season also begins soon as well, right?
Very soon, yes. Sunday, October the 5th. The schedule was announced on Sunday by the KBO, with the regular season to end on Friday. The wildcard series will begin on Sunday with 4th versus 5th. The next phase is due to start on October 8th, with the weather allowing to, of course, and then the second round on October 16th. And the Korean series on October 24th. The Kia Tigers were the champions last year, but are out of contention this season. The LG Twins are on the verge of sealing their place in the Korean series. They are top of the standings and need just to tie with the Hanwha Eagles in tonight's game to do so. The Eagles are guaranteed to finish in second, meaning it's just 3rd through 5th that are up for grabs.
Right. And finally to badminton, I have to say An Se-young is human after all.
It seems so, yeah. She finished as a runner-up in the Korea Open. The world #1 fell short of earning title #8 of the year, losing to Akane Yamaguchi of Japan 2-0, 21-18, 21-13. It was An's first loss to Yamaguchi in 4 matches this year. However, there were reasons for the home crowd to celebrate. South Korea won the men's and women's doubles titles on Sunday. Kim Won-ho and So Sung-jae beat Fajar Alfian and Mohamed Shoaib Fikri of Indonesia 2-0, 21-16, 23-21. And Kim Hye-jong and Kong Hee-young overcame Rin Iwanaga and Kia Nakanishi 2-0 of Japan, 21-19, 21-12 for their first Korea Open title together.
All right, Paul, thanks for that as always. I'll see you after the Chuseok break.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
As it rained yesterday, the air became cooler in the morning and evening. Today's morning temperature in Seoul fell to 16.6 degrees Celsius, about 1 to 4 degrees lower than yesterday morning in most areas. However, the temperature in Seoul rapidly rose to 25 degrees, making the daily temperature range in inland areas widen to around 10 degrees. Tomorrow, showers are expected in the Seoul metropolitan area, western parts of Gangwon-do, Chungcheong-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces in the daytime and evening. The morning will start cool at below 20 degrees in most parts of the country. Daily highs move up to 25 degrees in Seoul, Gwangju, and Daegu, 27 degrees in Busan. More rain is forecast in Jeollanam-do province and Jeju Island starting from Thursday, and it will spread to the Chungcheong-do provinces and the rest of the south on Friday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
해금은 두 줄로 된 현악기인데 저도 처음에 시작하게 된 거는 그 두 줄에서 너무 다양한 소리가 나오는 게 너무 신기했고 일단 해금이 되게 사람의 목소리랑 좀 비슷하다고 많이들 하세요. 줄을 눌러서 이렇게 음을 계속 왔다 갔다 진동하는 그런 형태를 띠고 있다 보니까 애절하다라고 많이 말씀을 해주시는 것 같아요. 이 곡은 제가 좀 오래 좋아했던 친구에 대한 제 여러 감정을 담은 곡인데요. 슬펐던 마음, 혹은 뭐 고마웠던 마음, 이런 여러 가지 감정들을 한데 묶어서 마음이 담긴 곡이라고 할 수 있습니다. 현대적인 음악으로 이제 재구성하는 단계를 거칠 때 항상 중요하게 생각하는 거는 음악의 분위기를 해치지 않는 선에서는 뭔가 전통적인 주법들, 식임새, 이런 전통의 냄새라고 할까요? 맛? 이런 걸 살릴 수 있는 요소들을 좀 집어넣으려고 하는 편이에요. 저는 요새 연주하면서도 스스로가 마음도 편하고 몸도 편안한 음악들을 좀 자주 들려드리고 싶다. 제가 음악으로 위로받았던 것처럼 제가 하는 음악들로 여러분들이 좀 위로받을 수 있는 순간이 있었으면 좋겠다. 그런 무대를 만들려고 노력해야겠다라는 생각을 했던 것 같습니다.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 APEC은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung's full-scale diplomatic campaign ignited at the UN General Assembly is now entering a critical phase. While his End initiative drew attention on the global stage, unresolved tariff disputes with Washington are escalating. U.S. President Trump bluntly called Korea's $350 billion investment a prepayment, raising pressure and drawing clear lines. Now, with a Korea-Japan summit next and a possible Trump-Xi encounter at the APEC, Seoul's ambitions to serve as a bridge between rival powers face a tough diplomatic stress. To break down Korea's diplomatic strategy and key regional issues, we are joined in the studio by Christophe Godin, Professor of Political Science at Heung-min University. A big welcome, Professor.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
And also joining us online is Evan Servier, former U.S. Acting Assistant Secretary of State and non-resident senior fellow in the Foreign Policy Program at Brookings. Welcome.
Great to be with you again.
So let's start with Mr. Revere right away. So President Lee Jae-myung has returned home after wrapping his schedule at the UN General Assembly. And from his keynote speech to presiding over an open UN Security Council debate, I wonder, how did you assess President Lee's overall performance?
Well, this was obviously President Lee's first appearance at this very important, on this very important stage. I think President Lee was clearly determined to show leadership, to show initiative, to show ambition, and also to underscore the Republic of Korea's international activism. And I think on all of those fronts, he certainly succeeded. I think it's also fair to say that he showed a willingness to take some risks as he proposed the END, the End Initiative towards North Korea, because he did so despite the fact that Pyongyang has consistently and strongly rejected all of his previous efforts, all of his government's previous efforts to restart dialogue, to promote exchange, and to pursue denuclearization. And President Lee was, I think, treading on somewhat dangerous turf as he explained the initiative, both at the UN General Assembly in his remarks, but also in some press interviews that he did, because he demonstrated a willingness to defer denuclearization and even accept a freeze of North Korea's nuclear program, a freeze that could not possibly be monitored because the North Koreans have consistently refused monitoring. And President Lee's remarks, both at the UNGA as well as in those interviews, drew quite a bit of criticism, including from some who thought that this program, this initiative, might put South Korea on the slippery slope to a de facto acceptance of North Korea as a nuclear country for a long time to come. On other fronts, I think President Lee's visit came in the midst of what is frankly a downturn in U.S. ROK ties. As a result of the unfortunate ICE arrest of Korean workers in Georgia, the strong U.S. pressure on South Korea to invest in the United States, the large tariffs that the United States has imposed on South Korea, and the continued uncertainty about the U.S. defense commitment and the status of U.S. forces, all of those things are on the agenda right now, and all of them, all of these issues, with the exception of what happened in Georgia, have been bubbling under the surface since even before President Lee's recent summit with President Trump. But those issues have now come to the surface again. And if nothing else, I think President Lee's recent visit was a reminder that there is a lot of hard work to be done to keep U.S. ROK relations on a steady course.
Definitely a lot of details to be sorted out in the coming months to come. But before we get into the details, I also want to hear Professor Godang's opinion on the so-called END initiative that President Lee has laid out. How would you evaluate the substance and the feasibility of the proposal?
I think the best way I could summarize it would be a smaller, a downsized, a more pragmatic version of the sunshine policy of previous democratic presidents. In fact, the end game of President Lee is denuclearization. Anybody in their right mind will aim at the same objective. However, as Mr. Revere mentioned, the North is never to give up on their nuclear weapons realistically, because what is this nuclear capacity for Kim Jong-un's regime? It is their life insurance. It is the insurance that they will never get kicked out of power with foreign operations, the way Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi have been in the past. So if we want to discuss denuclearization with people who don't want to denuclearize, there is nothing to discuss. So hence this initiative. This initiative is a sort of step-by-step process, hence starting with basically exchanging then eventually normalizing, and hopefully in a long run, maybe in the next generation, some hope for a denuclearized North Korea, eventually. The point I think to be most important to emphasize here is that it is a step-by-step process, and it is, in my opinion, pragmatic, reasonable, and frankly, what other path is there to take? It is a narrow path to take, but there is no other one anybody, I think, could think of, rationally speaking.
Right, so we will have to start with exchange, and it will really depend on how North Korea takes this message. Now, during this visit to the U.S., President Lee also held back-to-back meetings with the leaders of Poland, Italy, the Czech Republic, Uzbekistan, and they also emphasized, cooperation in defense and AI as well. So, taking aside from, step back from North Korea, how should we interpret these kinds of efforts by President Lee in the context of, the administration's pragmatic multilateral diplomacy?
I think in the same line, because it is the same inspiration that is found behind all of this policy. The situation of South Korea is dangerous and relatively easy to summarize. South Korea is a middle power surrounded with aggressive neighbors, and for a while South Korea could count on the US as the backbone of their foreign policy. As we all know, right now, and for quite a few years, it won't be the case anymore. So the card President Lee has decided to play consists in playing multilateral policies. It consists in this time where populisms all over the world are pushing for more and more aggressive foreign policies. It is about branding Korea as a leader in multilateral foreign policies. So hence, as you mentioned, the fact that the debate that Lee Jae-myung hosted at the UN was about AI, hence these defense talks with countries that are a threat to nobody. What Lee Jae-myung is saying, I think, is that the world now needs more normalcy. And so it is about keeping all diplomatic channels open, or as open as possible. And so somehow the way I see it is that South Korea is planting for the future, because, again, realistically, there is no other path to be taken. South Korea is taken somewhere. South Korea is in the middle of this trade war to happen between the US and China, and South Korea is not powerful enough. I don't think South Korea has the will either to engage in this sort of escalation. And so in this context, the best card you have to play is multilateralism. And this is why I think it is killed, and so far it's been executed with, as Mr. Revere mentioned, with determination and with competence as well.
Right. So it really definitely shows Korea's will to broaden its diplomacy beyond its traditional sphere. Now, let's also touch upon economic issues, Mr. Revere. President Lee also met with Treasury Secretary Besant in the bid to find a breakthrough in the ongoing tariff negotiations with Washington, of course. But Trump continues to stress that the $350 billion investment is a, quote, prepayment, underscoring the deep, rift between both sides. What do you think is behind Washington's, hardline stance?
Well, it's no secret that the core elements of Donald Trump's economic and trade policy include using tariffs as a revenue-generating tool, coercing allies and trading partners to invest in the United States, as the U.S. is trying to do right now with respect to this $350 billion. And in the course of doing all of that, trying to rebuild the U.S. industrial base. President Trump's approach is largely driven by the belief that Korea and others have taken advantage of the United States for many decades, and that tariffs, investment demands, pressure to increase defense spending, and even demand payments in return for U.S. defense support. All of these things are appropriate responses to that. So those are the core elements of Trump's approach and Donald Trump's thinking, and dealing with those rather unconventional views and very controversial views, I think, is going to be a major challenge, not just for Korea, but for other key American allies and trading partners going forward. We're in uncharted waters when it comes to dealing with all of these trade and economic issues here. And the attitude and the perspective that Donald Trump brings to this set of issues is particularly problematic.
Right, a very difficult situation that we're really in right now. So in light of this, Professor Godong, what kind of negotiation levers do you think South Korea has right now? What kind of strategic options are we left with?
There are few options because, as Mr. Rivia mentioned, and this is the backbone of President Trump's policy, Korea is selling to the US much more than they buy. And so, as a result, leverage is limited. What I can tell is that, first, Korea is producing semiconductors, just like Taiwan, and so far, for the moment, there have been no alternative for America but to import these semiconductors from East Asia. So that's one bargaining chip. But that's basically everything there is, because for the West, when it comes to cars, to shipbuilding and the like, there are alternate trading partners. So far, the approach that the Lee administration has been taking, it has been about trying to somehow negotiate with the US. For instance, a couple months ago with this Make American Shipbuilding Great Again, so offering the US to invest in America in exchange for lowering these tariffs. There is no other option to be taken right now, because as Mr. Rivia mentioned, for the Trump administration, in the first place, these tariffs are a revenue-generating policy. Trump's tax cuts cost billions, even thousands of billions, and in the long run, and so in the result, they need to be compensated somehow. And there is no other reasonable way for America to compensate these tax cuts, but with these new revenues. So for Korea, long story short, thank God for semiconductors, and for the rest, wait and see, uncharted waters.
Right, so semiconductors could also play a key role in these negotiations. Now let's move on to a very important event that will be held tomorrow in South Korea's Busan city, the Seoul Tokyo Summit. So Professor, with Prime Minister Ishiba expected to step down early next month, what is the significance of this special summit tomorrow? Do you think it's a sign of renewed commitment, or?
It is exactly what it is, because nothing substantial is to be decided with no prime minister in Japan, and on top of it, nobody can tell for the moment what line the Liberal Democratic Party is to take in Japan, between the hardliners and the more centrists. No, I think the one goal of this summit can be summarized quite simply. It is about emphasizing that all channels of communication remain open between Korea and Japan, and between China and the US, the one solution Korea and Japan have is to stick together, regardless of who's the leader of such and such country. So that's what it is. It's just a sign that is being sent to the whole world. Nothing substantial can be decided in the absence of a Japanese leader, realistically.
So it's a symbolic message that we're open to, communication between both sides. So this, summit to be held tomorrow, it marks the first Korea-Japan summit since their meeting in Tokyo just around 38 days ago. What kind of agenda or key issues do you expect the two leaders to discuss, Mr. Revere?
Well, I think the bottom line for this summit is that the task for Japan and South Korea is to try to keep up the momentum that they have achieved in their bilateral ties. They're doing things together now that they've never done before. There's a broad range of bilateral cooperation and trilateral cooperation that includes the United States, and that's a good thing. I think the goal here, at least for now, is to avoid any backsliding in terms of the level of cooperation and mutual support that they've achieved here. And I think another critical goal is to see what can be done to try to insulate the bilateral relationship from any possible political change that may happen in Tokyo in the coming days as the Japanese choose a new prime minister. And I think it's especially important in light of the possibility that there might be a rightward shift in Japanese politics. And I think both the Japanese prime minister and the Korean president understand that and are trying to figure out a way to insulate the relationship and insulate the accomplishments in the relationship from any of those shifts. I think they'll also, of course, try to explore new ways to expand and enhance cooperation. But the bottom line for this meeting is that it's a placeholder. It's meant to try to reassure each other. But more than anything, it's an attempt to keep up the momentum with a very wary eye on the immediate horizon about the possibility of political change in Japan.
Right, and it's clear that we're going to see some, political change, of course, in Japan's domestic politics. And speaking of that, then, Professor Godong, what kind of variables could, the change in Japan's inner politics bring to, Korea-Japan relations?
Well, the first thing to keep in mind is that the Liberal Democratic Party is not a party in the traditional sense of the term, because it is not exactly a force, a unified force, like the People's Party in Korea or the Republican Party in America. It's more like a conglomerate of tendencies that are extremely different, from centrist to much more hardline right-wing conservatives. And for the moment, what is happening in Japan is that, as you know, there is a populist right-wing party, the Sanseito, that's been extremely successful at the last elections. And honestly, I am not sure that the Japanese government themselves knows what to do. If you look at the bigger picture, over the last 3 decades, only 2 Japanese prime ministers, only 2, Koizumi and Abe, have lasted more than a couple of years. So this political crisis in Japan, it shows, in my opinion, a much larger state of disarray. Japan, for the moment, hasn't been able to find back the sort of magical mixture that made it so successful in the 80s and in the 90s. So everything is very secretive and mysterious about Japanese politics, I must say. What I can tell is that if the hardline LPD gets the prime ministry, probably they will move closer to America. And if a more centrist, more pro-business approach is to be taken, you can assume a more understanding approach to the claims of China and Korea. But for the moment, nothing I've been able to read in the press has been very indicative of one tendency taking the upper hand over the other. These are uncharted waters, again, for Japanese politics as well.
Right, so we'll really have to keep close eyes on the developments over in Tokyo. Now, before we conclude our discussion, Mr. Revere, let's talk about the U.S.-China dynamic at the APEC. There are growing interest in a possible first face-to-face between U.S. President Donald Trump and the Chinese President Xi Jinping. And President Lee, in a recent Time magazine interview, emphasized Seoul's role as a bridge between the two countries. What kind of diplomatic strategy do you think South Korea needs in order to play a more meaningful mediating role there?
Well, obviously, President Trump and President Xi have met before. They've been on the phone. This would be, of course, the first summit between the two of this current Trump administration. There's been very intense interaction and communication between the United States and China behind the scenes in the run-up to the APEC summit. They've been talking about trade issues. They've been talking about things like TikTok and other matters. But as for the Republic of Korea and its role here, I always told my South Korean friends that I strongly advise them to avoid describing the Republic of Korea as a bridge between the United States ally, ROK, and the PRC, to avoid trying to play some sort of bridging role here. That really grates on the ears of a lot of policymakers in Washington. It doesn't sit well in Washington. It reminds policymakers of previous ROK rhetoric, where South Korea described itself as a balancer between the United States and China. And so in terms of the Korean strategy, the South Korean strategy, I think the number one thing on my list of recommendations would be careful of words like that, because they create a very uncomfortable sense in Washington about South Korea, and they have a tendency to perhaps even undercut confidence of the United States and U.S. policymakers in the ROK.
Right, a very important note to conclude our discussion tonight. I'm afraid that'll be all for today, but thank you so much for your insights, Professor Gov't.
Thanks.
And of course, Mr. Revere, we really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Great to be with you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.